just as the safety valves go off as well. Anyway, hello everyone, and welcome back to Train Simulator. This time we're taking a look at this thing, the Great Western 7200 class, not to be confused with KiwiRail's DFB 7200. This is a rather large 282 tank engine that was developed from the 4200 class, which was just a 280. And from what I gather, the reason why they had this extra pony truck under the cab was to carry the extra weight of an embiggened coal bunker. I don't remember how many 7200s were built, but I know that 3 are preserved, although sadly 7241 isn't one of the survivors. In fact, the reason why I went for 7241 specifically is because that's the same number as one of KiwiRail's DFB locomotives. Anyway, so yeah, today we're on the Dark Railway 1960s route, which was made, of course, by Dark DJ Productions and used to be available on UK Train Sim, which is where I got the route. But yeah, it was taken down a few years ago, and it isn't available anymore. Come to think of it, I'd hate to just realised Dark DJ himself will probably get pissed if he sees me pottering around on his route, especially if I'm referencing dead memes. Anyway, so today we're going to take the 7200 and haul these private owner wagons full of coal up to Soma Quarry to help supply the machinery, as well as a steam locomotive that's based there for shunting duties. I always like the 7200s because you can do, well, the Great Western heavy freight tanks that Victory Works did, because you can do the two-tone whistle thus. Or you could play both whistle tones at the same time and you get this. Oh, it's a random 7F. Oh, how's this for historical accuracy? An engine in Great Western colours, trundling past an engine in BR colours. Although I wouldn't mind betting that, I'm pretty sure Great Western had a basic black livery. So you could probably reskin the 7F by taking the BR crest off and putting on Great Western lettering instead. Probably piss off the purists, but at least it'd still be having fun in some way. Right, now from what I understand, the 7200s did actually take, would have often taken coal trains back in their normal service lives, so that's what I've gone with today. Right, now I haven't driven this thing in absolutely ages, so I'm not sure what the ideal regulator and reverser settings are, and combining that with trying to maintain as much boiler pressure as possible. And then of course there's the other matter of getting coal on the fire. Incidentally, I just noticed that the safety valve bonnet is this thing here on the middle of the boiler, by the way. I'm surprised that the safety valve bonnet is just green. Because I remember, I think a lot of Great Western engines actually had brass safety valve bonnets. Although I dare say that would have only been reserved for engines that they had on passenger services. Or possibly these traffic ones, I'm not entirely sure. Let's see how this will look with the grey exhaust. I remember that on steam locomotives, the exhaust from the funnel will turn this greyish black when they've got coal, when the fireman's shoveling coal on the fire. Yeah, I mean, I'd hate to think what it would have been like to drive one of these engines in real life, considering how odd the proportions are. I mean, I think to me it's just this huge coal bunker that's doing it and like making the proportions all strange. Something else that I just remembered that's perhaps worthy of mention is that the 7200s were one of, I think, only 3 classes of 2H2 steam locomotives to ever run in the UK. The others were both on the LNER, which were the Grizzly P1 and P2 classes. It's a distance signal for Axley. I just realised I forgot to mention earlier, I don't think I mentioned earlier, but we started at Galen Junction. And I just realised that if what I remember from the Dark Railway series is anything to go by, this part of England is meant to be, or this route is meant to be part of the county of Kent. And yet here, which would have been Southern Railway territory, and yet here we are pissing off the purists. Although I don't really know how you could complain about accuracy on a fictional route. There's that note to say. Do not look over or pass along the side of this cab when near bridges or tunnels, low gauges or coal stations. Dated January 1909. I seem to recall seeing that sort of that notice on the steam rail motors. Other thing about Victory Works engines is that more often than not you'll find that the cab windows and doors can be open. Although I suppose in this thing the closest you've got to a door is this. You can also flip down the seat, although I'm not sure if that would... Oh, great, let's see that too well. Yeah, I'm not sure if you'd actually want to sit on that, especially when it's quite a fair way from the controls. What's other stuff here? Excuse me for if I sound like I'm being distracted from looking down the line at the track, but A, I know that we've got a clear run for Soma, and B, I haven't really taken the time to look around these cabs properly, so I thought I might as well do that whilst it's on my mind. There's there's a handbrake lever, which you would... I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to use the handbrake to stop the train, but rather just to once you brought the engine to a stop, you put the handbrake on, and that'll stop it rolling away. And that's the primary purpose of the handbrake. And that looks like something to do with the... Oh no. There's a thing there to get access to the bunker, start shoveling coal. There's obviously the firehole doors, and with Victory Works engines they don't have a performance mode option, so you can't switch off like the point lights, meaning that you can't switch off, on these engines you can't switch off the firebox glow effect, which means that when you've got the firehole doors open, it means a significant drop in frame rate, or in the frame rate. And right above the firehole doors there's what I think is a flask of tea. I remember I've learned recently that even though tea is so strongly associated with the United Kingdom, they don't actually grow any tea plants and tea leaves there because I think it's the wrong climate, from what I understand. Anyway, as we come into Axley, there's a bit of a ridiculous choice of motive power for the Soma shuttle, if ever I saw one. And if you don't know what this thing is, it is a Class 171 Turbostar. Although this particular unit is actually an ex-ScotRail Class 170 that got converted into a 171. Yes, and I remember in the Dark Railway series that obviously Axley used to have this grand overall roof covering both the main line and the platform for the Soma branch. But I think at some point in the series, there was some nasty weather event and it ended up taking out the overall roof. And here's a curious beast. But I figured that since we're driving a Great Western engine, I might as well put at least... Well, since we're driving a Great Western engine already, I figured I might as well put in another one from the GWR. Why is this engine down to a crawl? Actually, that's something I've just realised. I've got no idea why I've ended up slowing down to a crawl as we go through Axley. But no, this massive Pacific is, well, there's her name, is the Great Bear, although I'm not sure what that refers to. Anyway, this was the Great Western Railway's one and only 462 Pacific. She was designed by George Jackson Churchwood and built in 1908. And if my research is correct, she didn't last particularly long in her original condition. Because I think in 1923 she was actually rebuilt as a 460 Castle class. Just realised these cylinders are so far back, they remind me of the bloody Thompson Pacifics. Anyway, back to the 7200, whose deafening safety valves are about to do my head in. Now, I've just remembered that the Soma branch has got a pretty severe 1 in 50 gradient, and I think had I actually been concentrating on driving this bloody thing, I would have noticed that, I would have realised that sooner and then tried to take a good run at the incline. I feel like even if we ran and got the shunter from Soma to come and help us, I don't think that would help all that much. I'd be pleasantly surprised if anyone can still hear me over the noise of this locomotive. I did tweet that I'm still trying to work out an ideal volume setting for both the microphone and like the in-game master volume. Now we're coming up to, so this is the junction for the Soma branch, and that curve we're about to take looks really sharp. And we're still managing it despite the engine's long wheelbase. There's that line curving off to the left is the main line that goes up towards Mk1. I think the next stop from Axley is either Lake, Holt or Walschurch. This Soma branch may be short, but it's got, I think it has a gradient that can get as steep as 1 in 50. So, well, 1 in 56 in this case. But yeah, I figured that whichever route I would take from Axley, be it going to Soma or up towards Mk1, it would have meant that I would be able to put this thing through her paces instead of having a very basic run across a largely flat and level branch line like Malmesbury. And we're about to cross that viaduct that one episode of TDRS was destroyed after a runaway Class 04 went speeding down it with a rake of wagons. Whilst I certainly do admire Dark DJ's efforts in his route building, I must admit that this original DR 1960s route has not aged particularly well. And again, that's through no fault of Mr. Dibdin himself. It's just that I think this route was built using entirely Kuju assets, like from the old KiwiRail simulator days. Yeah, I think in some ways it's easy to see why people don't really use these assets in route building anymore. I mean, I wouldn't know because I don't know how to make routes in Train Simulator. And what I do know gives me the impression that it's an extremely tedious process. Although saying that, I remember many years ago there was some challenge, I think, where people had to see if they could build a route for Train Simulator within 24, like build and finish a route within 24 hours, and the result of that endeavour, I think, was one called Foreign Peninsula, which is, to me, is one of the, I mean, it certainly hasn't aged well, but it's still one of the better, one of the routes that I've enjoyed driving on quite often. In fact, I think once I've finished this run with the Great Western 7200 class, might actually I'll see if I can actually do something with Foreign Peninsula. If not, I'll probably just do something for Train Sim World 2 today. Especially since I just thought to mention this. At the time, as I'm currently recording this, it's 8:20 in the morning, or 20 past 8, however you want to say it. And I've got only about 3.5 hours to go before I'll have to get ready to leave for Hamilton, which is a pretty big city here in New Zealand. I mean, it's certainly bigger than Tauranga, huh? There's a field of poppies, floating poppies. Yeah, I don't know what these birds. But anyway, so yeah, I'm going to try and get at least 2 videos done today before I have to leave. And I'm thinking the second one will either be about Falmouth Peninsula or train, like British Rail era train spotting in TSW. Now there's that other steam engine I was on about, the shunter at Soma that I've featured in a video before. I'll have a close-up look at her a little bit later once I've got this whole train in the loop. Considering the severity of that incline that we've just gone up on, the 7200 is actually handled pretty well. Oh, also, these green wagons here and the brake van with the DR lettering on it, that was part of a that was part of a wagon pack that Dark DJ used to have on UK Train Sim, just like the DR 1960s route itself. I never noticed that. Look at this lever on the side of the wagon. That is pretty damn impressive. Because I've had like the Great Western heavy freight tanks for years, and I've never noticed that they actually managed to get the handbrake lever moving on these wagons. But no, as I was saying, these green wagons with the DR in the brake van with the DR branding, these were available on UK Train Sim along with the DR 1960s route, and I don't know if the wagons themselves are still available or not, but as I said earlier, I know for a fact this route itself isn't available anymore. And come to think of it, neither is Falmouth Peninsula. And all I can really say is that, without sounding too much of a boastful prick, that I certainly do feel some sympathy for the people or for those who were never able to get this route. And yeah, before I forget, this is an engine I've featured in one of my previous videos where she's actually done some shunting here at Soma. This is the little Manning Wardle 040 saddle tank on the southeastern and Chatham Railway. Long hinge works. It's odd. I wonder what that means. Anyway, yeah, this is a Caledonia Works product, and as per usual, it's really quite good, if I'm honest. And even though I haven't really got any of his more recent products, I still think Caledonia Works is one of the better, if not best, developers in Train Simulator, especially since he's always making like often very obscure steam locomotives that you would never never have heard of until he brought them out for Train Simulator, and B, never would have thought that they would ever come to Train Simulator. Case in point, this thing and the Caledonian Railway Cardines. These bloody safety valves. Anyway, so I've got the handbrake on the tow brake van and the wagons, so we can pull forward. Because I'm not going to do, for the purposes of this video, I won't do any major shunting here at Soma, and I think I'll just put this engine in the shed. No, that doesn't mean putting it in a Class 66. Like, how would you even do that from the start? Oh, these curves are so sharp that we're just about to have to shoot forward. Or at the very least, keep the regulator open. Yeah, one thing's for sure is that I don't think, if this was a yard layout in real life, I don't think they would ever allow an engine as huge as this to do the shunting. You would certainly never get engines this big working as dock shunters. If anything, that's probably what the little Manning Wardle engine would have been used for, as a dock shunter. Right, I'll go back without the risk of derailing. These safety valves are taking a little bit more time to lift than I thought, to bring the boiler pressure down than I thought, but they are certainly a very important device on a steam locomotive, and that they essentially, safety valves make sure the boiler doesn't explode. Then I'm pretty sure if the boiler pressure gets too high, then it can go bang. And I have seen enough photographs to know that that it's not a pretty picture at all when a steam locomotive suffers a boiler explosion. Because all the boiler tubes go spilling out the front of the boiler as if it was some horrifying, like, bloody Shed 17 parody. Okay, I think I might have stopped this train a little bit too far back. Do I dare try to go past? I suppose there's just enough clearance. There's more clearance than I was expecting. I would do an impression of the Railway Series character Toad, or like how he sounds on telly, but I don't want to make you cringe any more than you probably already have done. I realise now that as like when I was going through Axley, that I'm now going a lot slower than slower than is really necessary. And because logic, here's some modern tat. And of course this is an LNER Class 800. Why I decided to put this here, I have absolutely no sodding clue. These things are of course electro diesels, which is why I was able to, did want to put it down. For some reason I did still want to put down a Hitachi IET and put down the 800 because that could be on diesel mode here. Although come to think of it, I'd hate to think what the Dark Railway would look like if it was electrified and just had like Southern 377s or 455s running about. Yeah, I suppose that's one of the things I always like about Train Simulator, is that you can be a little silly with your choices of rolling stock. There's another curve that's threatening to do us in. Yeah, I mean, I know that I obviously knew that the 7200s had very long wheelbases, being 2H2s, but I didn't think that I foolishly didn't think that it would have any impact on us trying to drive the engine around the yard. It's curious. This shed just looks like looks identical to a goods shed. And there's this water crane and coal stage here, but I don't think we'll need either of those. Come to think of it, I wonder how a 7200 would look on the Isle of Wight steam railway. Well, I'll just have a quick look over here. So remember that there was some depiction of a town, and I think this is meant to be either the town of Soma, but other than that, there doesn't seem to be that much going on, if anything. Seems... I would have thought that there'd be a turntable here. Although I suppose with those two crazy Hawthorne Leslie 040 saddle tanks pottering about with their weird experiments, they wouldn't really want a turntable because they'd probably find some way of messing it up. But yeah, has been a relatively short run from Galen Junction to Soma, with what I can safely say is one of my favourite Great Western engines. And I really do hope that, and I thank you very much for watching. I really do hope that you've enjoyed it and that you'll stick around for more of these sorts of gameplay videos in the future. Even though sometimes I can go off rambling in a very nonsensical manner. But no, in all seriousness though, I really do appreciate you watching these videos, and I will see you next time.